Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm Anton Kuzmin, head of the Monitoring Center of CyberArt, and today I would like to discuss the automation of these processes, also cybersecurity incident reaction. During the course of my presentation, you'll be able to see a chance to ask your questions, and in the end of the presentation, once I'm done, I would like to answer your questions. So I think we should be starting with the requirements set by the legislation that we need to comply with the different legislation and federal laws and decrees that you would have to comply with. Basically, you can split them into three parts. The first one is covered with the regulations and decrees and instructions. The second part is covered by technical means, protection tools, monitoring tools. But there is the most important part, which is the process-related part. This actually requires not just having protection tools as such, and regulations, but also having the staff, having the processes arranged, having the clear interaction between all of the three. If we focus on the current legislation, the SOC targets and the cybersecurity goals look like the ones shown at the slide. You may be aware of all of them, and I think there is no point of stopping at that slide. Cybersecurity department would have to have the following parts. First of all, the inventory control. We'll have to know where we belong, what we control. We need to see all of the changes. The second very important part is the detection of the vulnerabilities and the configuration errors. Also, the ones that can pose threat and through which computer attacks can be carried out. Also the detection and the actual liquidation of the consequences of the computer attacks. And the next one expands a little bit further. It includes the analysis and the detection of the relevant threats that are possible for the company, and also the increase of the competition and experience of the staff, and the analysis and the organization and reorganization of the company's means, instruments, and tools. Thus, these functions would have to be considered as the basis. These documents also sets the roles for experts and the expert roles. Of course, knowing from experience, having so many people in SOC is not very beneficial, and it would be too expensive. One expert can easily share 2-3 roles, so each particular role is not a role for a dedicated individual, so it would not be profitable at all. And the problems that you may have seen and we have seen in terms why we'd always need to arrange the processes in the right way, and why can we not leave it like this, having no clear approach and having no exact understanding of what needs to be done to prevent an incident, and during the course of an incident creates a situation that seems like that every time the same process is done differently by a new person. So it creates mistakes by humans, it slows down the process, it slows down and it makes it quite painful. So the slower we react, the deeper the attacker penetrates. Thus, it results in the decreased level of protection against such threats. What do we have to start with? If we only focus on laws and decrees, you may be facing with a set of problems. Initially, these decrees and laws and recommendations and documents are created by technical experts, but their alignment and adoption is done by the Ministry of Law. It's done by legal experts, and such decrees are finally changed into something legally right, but quite complicated technically. And I would say that these documents and norms cannot stipulate internal processes of any company. So without your own experience, without knowing your own processes, you won't be able just simply make all of these processes work in the right way. And the third thing, which is a problem and it stands out a mile, these norms are constantly changing, are constantly modified. And even the time you spend reacting to these changes, legal changes, and putting them on the processes requires quite a lot of work, and it's a costly and toilsome process. You may want to arrange these processes on your own, but what to start with? You can start with a regulation. So, for example, you describe a big regulation, nice, beautiful regulation, which, for example, describes the vulnerability management process. This regulation may have from 10 to 20 pages, and normally from 2 to 3 different departments would participate, and you would send this document to them, which may be developed from 2 weeks to 1 month, and you'd send this document to them, and you may even be getting a response from them if you send it through your contacts. But when it comes to the actual fulfillment of the process, it normally happens like this. They would find this regulation, try to read it, and start criticizing it because they had not read it before, they had just adopted it. Or the second way is often chosen, nothing is done at all, and the actual executor is just waiting till somebody comes up to him or her and explains what has to be done. So making this through regulations, you need to bear in mind that these instructions are not studied, or people start studying them just at the time when they need to start implementing them, which is a bad thing, of course. And of course, you may reach each specific executor with this regulation and explain what they would have to do. Maybe they will even jot it down, but normally practice reveals that after 2 hours, the person will forget about 40% of what's been explained, and 80% will be forgotten in a day, and they would always refer to having more important tasks from the management, and everything will just repeat. When it comes to the process, he will normally come back to you and would ask you a question. Would you please remind me what you were you trying to explain? So these are the problems, and of which we are all aware. What do we suggest to do to avoid that? Well, we'd suggest that you start with a few steps. At step number 1, you come up with the processes. We model the processes and how these roles are aligned, and we define which role belongs to each division. After that, we set up a role model. So these are the tools written down here, which are the tools that you can utilize. You can see them here on the slide. You can use your convenient tools. Use whatever you find convenient. And on step 3, like it's required by legislation, like your management is requiring, you come up with a regulation, the manual, and to this manual and regulation, you just put the processes modeled and the role model. And on step 4, you're checking all of your processes you've described. You understand which tasks are repeated most of the time, and you are moving towards the automation of this whole algorithm to take off the load of the individuals. For example, an EPC representation, which is a simple one. What do we see here? Here we can see the event chain of this whole process. Like, for example, the detection of a computer-related incident. This process should always start, and, like an EPC representation should start with a gray box. You'd always have to know when something reaches you. These tasks are marked with the green boxes, and for each one we have the initial point and the end point. And normally there would not be 2 arrows. To split the roles between the actual executors, you take the so-called tracks. You have the typical functions, expanded ones, the functions related to the change of the infrastructure, so you can do all that. Here you describe a set of activities, choose the actors, visualize the events in a form of a chart or scheme. And on step 2, you can consider the formalization, which particular tasks should be carried out. And there should be a split shown here in this matrix by position, by names. So we are using the RACI. R is the one responsible for carrying out the task. A is the one who has administrative rights to take decisions. C is the consultant, and I is the one who gets the information about the work done. We have all of these tasks arranged here by columns. And the role of the participant here is described in the form of a chart with the allocated RACI letters. What would we recommend you start? from when reacting to incidents. We suggest that you start with the very simple steps for the reaction. Here is this slide depicting the following of the network intelligence incident. You can see the allocation by roles of those responsible, accountables, supported roles, etc. It's crucial that we follow through the first three. We just need to learn about the incident. We need to launch the reaction to the incident. We need to launch our response and show that this incident is not a legitimate activity of an IT admin, or it's not created by some application which is doing some investigation. And the main thing here is the isolation of the asset from the internet to prevent the further spreading of the threat inside the network. Like, for example, the worm-like spreading of some malware, of which we are all aware. And like I was saying, once you've described all of these processes, you just need to describe the reaction processes, all of the things that you need to detect and react to. The investigation is when your host is already disconnected from the network, and you can do some exercises using it up to 1 week. It's kind of difficult to describe each possible threat. For this, we'd have to have this threat analysis. So it's suggested that we describe the reaction scenario. And once you've covered the first 3 steps, once we have created the metrics, once we have created the so-called playbooks, you regulate the process. And here are examples which types of documents are required to prepare to more effectively prevent and respond to the incidents. And automatically you move to step 4. I've borrowed this slide from our colleagues who specialize in IRP, and they would like to tune it to the monitoring center purposes. Without getting deep into this busy slide, I would say that the main response activity is to very quickly respond to and have the maximum result of this response. You just need to automate those tasks that will help you react to the threat in a very short span of time. For example, you've seen something at CNC at your host, you just need to block it at your firewall. Then at the second phase, it's best to isolate this host from all the rest of the corporate network. And these are the things that you need to consider in the automation process. What are the automation options? Sometimes you may write a script, write scripts that you can launch manually, and you'd agree with the IT service so that you'd be allocated an account with the only right at the firewall to block a specific IP address or close a specific port, whatever. And second of all, you may want to have an account which would block user accounts. It's a live example. It's very often used by cybersecurity experts, and if you use the orchestrator in your company, it can be used as one of the automation tools. And there are sometimes some EDR tools, EDR-based tools that you can conduct on some hosts. But for here, we use our IRP system, which would help us integrate with different infrastructure components and use commands from there. Would often agree with IT people and just connect to the orchestrator. So all of the accounts belong to IT, they control these processes, etc. So that was a brief explanation of this topic, and I think I'm done here, and maybe you would like to ask me questions. Basically, this is it. Well, the moderator is telling me that there are no questions. I would like to thank you for joining me here for this session. Have a nice day and good luck with your safe processes. See you. Bye.